This is video number 6 of RASP HOWTO. In this video, I'm going to explain how to set up Google Cloud to run your RASPs. So let me actually start with web hosting. Because I'm using Google Cloud to run RASPs on schedule, but I'm using actually static web hosting to host website. And my choice is nearly freespeech.net, which is very cheap and feature-rich web hosting. For example, I put 20 bucks a couple of months ago, and I still have 12 bucks on the website, even though I host 4 websites, RASP websites, which are about gig something total of space. They consume that much space. I set up only one domain, subdomain for it, which works out great for me. Also, it supports SSH access using private key, which is important because Google Cloud instances will upload the files using this key. Also, it supports HTTPS, which is important if you want to enable location on your website, which is automatically enabled. You just need to access it using HTTPS and other things. I'm not going to talk about web hosting much. These are the things which are important that I said. Oh, and one more thing, it also supports HT access, which is important for caching. And yeah, so if you ever consider a web hosting, take a look at nearlyfreespeech.net. Okay, back to Google Cloud. So this is my project, HOWTO RASP. I have only one service instance running, and which is very low profile instance. I'm gonna show you how to create this instance, and the thing is, it runs forever, and since it's well, let me explain step by step what does it mean. So let me just create a new instance, demo instance, and I usually pick something close to me and cheap. By the way, you can check out computer engine pricing to see what are the prices on different regions and zones and what does it mean. And they provide micro instance, which is good enough for scheduling. It can run all the time, and they're saying your first 744 hours of this instance usage are free this month, which basically means the whole month is free. And yeah, pick micro, and I'm gonna deploy my favorite Linux distribution, which is gonna be Debian. Service account, and make sure to click allow full access to all cloud APIs, so this instance will get permission to create another instances. Okay, and create. So this instance on schedule will run a script which will create more instances which will run my forecast. If you look at the operations, for example, you see that I have a lot of this create instance, and delete instance. So it will basically create many short-living instances on demand to run forecast. But okay, one thing at a time. Let me explain what to do next. Now you can just SSH into this instance or use this button to have a terminal. And I just need to set it up. It's right now it's just vanilla Debian. There is nothing here. So first thing, you need to download create instance script from my RASP Docker GitHub. And just copy wget. And you can set up this machine the way you want. Okay, create instances here. And trying to run it. Python is here, good. But Google API discovery import doesn't work. That means I need to install Google API Python library. But first I need to install Python Pip to install the library. Again, so this is sudo apt-get install Python Pip. Okay, and it will take some time to download everything and set it up for me. Okay, it's done. And now I can run another command to actually install Google API Python client on this machine. It's rather quick. And Python create instance py. It doesn't error out. So the most important thing, it requires a config to run your instance. There is a sample config file on my RASP Docker script GitHub page, instance CFG. You can just download it. Rename, for example, or copy instance, for example, Tahoe CFG, and modify it. So first, you need to specify your project. Your project, i.e. my project, is Hollister RASP. Oops. Now you can pick your zone or leave it what I provided as default. Next item is your host name of the static web server where RASP will be uploaded. This is basically a string which will be used to connect to your web server, and you need to give both username and host name, and it will use this SSH private key for authentication, so make sure to provide this location properly as well. Speaking of, let's actually generate this SSH private key. I'll just leave everything by default, and it will generate a brand new RSA 2048 bytes key. Okay, and I need to give it my location. Okay, going back here, this one is directory where RASP is being stored on the host, on the web server. And let's say it's Tahoe. It will upload to this web server, to this directory. Now, this is directory name of the RASP within Docker container. When you create your Docker container, you have this uppercase directory name and you need to specify it right here. Next, Docker image name. Once you create your Docker image, you need to upload it to Docker Hub, just like all my images. And on Docker Hub, you will get this URL which identifies your Docker container. This is exactly what you need to put in here. Okay, and the last thing is machine type. So based on my experience, N1 high CPU 8 works best for my purposes. And you can pick basically any type you want. Standard types have certain CPU to memory ratio. And for example, for 8 gigs, I will get 30 gigs of memory, which is too much. And a cheaper option is N1 CPU, N1 high CPU 8, for example, will give you 7.2 gigabytes, which is plenty. You can pick 16, 32, up to 96. So for each day it will create a new instance and will run it. So for example, for my RASPs, I have 4 RASPs. NorCal Coast, for example, has 7-day forecast, which means it will create 7 instances for each day. Okay? Okay, and I need to save this file. And I'm ready to actually run it. Python create instance. Next thing you need, so Tahoe CFG config file, day 0 for today, 1 for tomorrow, 2 for 1 day after tomorrow. You get the idea. And the name of the instance is, you can pick any name, Tahoe 0. But I'm running it at night right now, so 0 will not be available. Today will not be available. I'll run it for tomorrow. Okay. Python create instance. Go. No such file or directory. Okay. Now it is suggesting that I need to also have this file, and I have. You can download this file from my GitHub page. It is basically a template for the new instance. You can read documentation and learn what all these sections mean, but basically this part is what will be executed on the instance. It will download SSH key from the host machine. It will determine environment variables. It will ultimately pull Docker image. It will run it, and after successful run, it will rsync out directory to your web hosting, and it will power off. So what this script does, create instance, it will first create a new instance. You see it's creating demo Tahoe 1, just as I specified right here. It will wait till this instance completes and powers itself off, and once it's off, it will delete it. It also, since those, I haven't said this yet, these instances are preemptible instances. These are special type of Google Cloud instances which are cheaper, but there is no guarantee that it will execute. It will continue executing. It may stop at any point whenever Google decides it needs more resources for other non-preemptible instances. So basically, this instance may die at any point, and this create instance script will monitor this instance, and if it has been preempted, it will restart it. Well, speaking of which, I run a lot of instances every day, and they get preempted all the time. So for example, you see here AutoHollister 1, it has been created, then it has been preempted, then the script restarted it, and ultimately it exited cleanly, and it has been deleted. So this is kind of life cycle of automatic instance. And since I run every days, for every forecast day I run separate instance, I can run them concurrently. So for example, AutoHollister 1 is basically forecasting for tomorrow, and while it's running, I actually can run other NorCal forecast, or even run another day concurrently. So it doesn't have to sit there whole day and forecast for a week. Okay, so this is what the script is telling me. It's this means it created an instance, and this is straightforward, waiting for the instance to terminate. Okay. You can actually log into your instance and see what it does. So it's running my forecast, and this is output directory. There are logs. And you can see that Tahoe model is running. and you can inspect all logs. Although the instance will be deleted, so if you don't want it to be deleted, then you need to modify my script to not delete it if you want to troubleshoot something after your forecast has completed. Okay, once it's done, it will produce output, an out directory, which will be copied using rsync onto your web server. And here is example of configuration of my RASP setup. So this is my service instance. I have separate configuration files for Hollister, Diablo, NorCal, and Tahoe, and I set up a cron which basically runs all this forecasts at correct time. So for example, I know that at 14:11 UTC time, of course, I know that all files are available for the forecast, so therefore I can run Hollister for today and other RASPs for today. Then as new files are becoming available on National Weather Service, I can run other forecasts for tomorrow, a day after tomorrow, and so on. And for example, for Tahoe and NorCal, I go beyond 3 days. I go all the way up to 7 days. And I store my logs separately on this machine, on service machine, just in case something goes wrong. I could pull the logs and see what went wrong. And this is for this is for the morning run. For the evening run, I just run 1 day to get updated, to get latest forecast for tomorrow. And also at midnight, what I do, I move files around on my web hosting. So even if you pull up a forecast for some day and this forecast is not ready yet, you won't get the message that this forecast is not available. You will get a forecast for that day, but made on the previous day, which is kind of important for Tahoe and NorCal because you can go all the way like 7 days ahead.